Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special Global News presentation. I'm Miranda Anthesol. February 6, 2022 marks 70 years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. She is the first British monarch to celebrate a Platinum Jubilee. And what a celebration it will be. Events and commemorations will take place throughout the year, including a massive birthday parade and the lighting of beacons. We'll have more on what's scheduled later on. But first, a look at the road that brought us to this historic milestone. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was born April 21, 1926. She was just a child when her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated the throne. Her father suddenly became king, and Elizabeth was next in line.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
King George VI died of a heart attack on February 6, 1952, at the age of 56. Elizabeth was in Kenya at the time, and at 25 years old, her life was forever changed when she was suddenly thrust onto the throne.
Only a week ago, she had left lightheartedly as the princess. Now it was the sad homecoming of a young queen.
The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II was over a year and a half later, when on June 2, 1953, history was made. This was the first coronation ceremony to be broadcast on television, giving the masses a glimpse at ancient royal traditions. Her empire has shrunk over time, with more than 25 countries declaring independence over the past 70 years. Others loosened their ties, like Canada, signing its constitution in 1982.
There could be no better moment for me, as Queen of Canada, to declare again my unbounded confidence in the future of this wonderful country.
Her Majesty's reign has spanned 14 British and 12 Canadian prime ministers, and she has made 22 trips to Canada, the most of any monarch. Behind the Queen, 3 generations of future kings, all heirs to the British throne. 7 decades on the throne as the Queen of England, Elizabeth II has been a long-standing symbol of strength and tradition for many in Britain and beyond. Now, to help further articulate the influence and impact she's had during her historic reign, we're joined now by Dr. Andy Mycock, an expert in British identity studies. So, Andy, Queen Elizabeth II is the longest reigning monarch in British history, as we all know, but she succeeded to the throne in a very unconventional way when she became the Queen of England at just the age of 25 years old. How prepared was she to do this, and how was she received by the public?
I think in many ways she'd spent all her childhood being prepared to become the monarch, but she certainly wasn't expecting her father to die so young. And I think it was quite a traumatic transition in many ways, that she found it very difficult at first to take on the responsibility of being the monarch. But she certainly was welcomed enthusiastically, although there was a significant amount of mourning about her father. She was a very popular monarch. And I think in many ways she embodied that sense of Britain coming out of the Second World War. She was young, and there's a certain sense of optimism that she embodied, that sense in which she was a new kind of monarch. And I think in that sense, for many people, as we come towards her 70th anniversary as monarch, I think people have lived their lives with her. I think she, in many ways, she's been through their lives. And so people feel a very strong connection to her in terms of the fact that for most people in the United Kingdom, they've lived most of their lives with Queen Elizabeth II as the monarch.
And of course, Britain's power on the global stage has changed significantly during her reign. Its once vast empire evolving into the Commonwealth of Nations. So, Andy, take us through what have been some of the key moments that have really defined the Queen's time on the throne.
Well, I think obviously the fact that she became monarch at a point of her life when really she wasn't expecting to. She oversaw the decline of the British Empire in many ways. We saw that transition from the British Empire to the Commonwealth, and in many ways that was a deeply affecting time for her, because of course it was a very different kind of monarchy to that of her previous monarchs. But I think many of the things that we've seen in terms of demarking her monarchy has been the sense in which Britain's changed over time as a country. It's become socially more multicultural. It's become a much more diverse country. And in many ways, the traditions that underpinned the monarchy when she first became monarch have slowly changed over time. But I think also that the relationship between British society and the monarchy has changed over time, and it's a very different kind of relationship. She's had to charter a period of profound change. And in that case, I think it's been one of the successes of the monarchy under Queen Elizabeth II that it has managed to adapt to a country that has changed hugely. At the same time, I think that her monarchy has been defined in many ways by issues with the family. And I think that we can remember a lot of the challenges that they had when Princess Diana died, but also the fact that there's been a certain amount of scandal around the party with different members of the royal family. So I think she's found it very difficult at times to marry the public relationship that she has, that public role, with the fact at times it's been a very deeply difficult time for her privately.
Absolutely. 70 years with everyone looking on at her, the Queen's reign spanning 7 decades. And we know that she's credited with trying to move the monarchy into a more modern direction, but while also still maintaining all those traditions. So what do you think, and this is maybe a tough question to answer, but what do you think will be her lasting legacy?
I think her lasting legacy will be numerous, and in many ways it'll be very much tied to people's own sense of history, their own sense of identity. But in many ways she's maintained the sense in which the monarchy is an integral part of British life, but also part of the British Constitution and also the family of Commonwealth nations. It's been a remarkable achievement in many ways for her to maintain that sense in which the monarchy has got a deep sense of affection and popularity in many countries. And I think one of the things which is really notable is that although there have been significant amounts of challenges to the monarchy in many different ways, that over 2/3 of the British public still are very firmly in support of the monarchy. So in that sense, I think that when people look back, they'll talk of an Elizabethan age which spanned a huge part of the 20th century and the 21st century, and that Elizabethan age was in many ways in a period that people look back very fondly.
And most certainly one to remember. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Queen Elizabeth, 70 years on the throne, has not always been smooth sailing. One of her lowest points came during the 90s, after 3 of her children divorced or separated from their spouses, and a fire gutted her Windsor Castle home. She referred to 1992, her 40th year on the throne, as Annus Horribilis, Latin for horrible year. In 1997, following the death of Princess Diana, the Queen at first failed to join the public outpouring of grief, but she quickly bowed to public pressure and delivered a televised speech mourning the loss. Now, the royals may have put the turbulence of the 90s behind them, but these last few years have presented their own unique challenges for the Queen, both at home and abroad, and all set against the backdrop of a global pandemic. And with more on this, we're joined by Redmond Shannon in our London bureau. So Redmond, through all the ups and downs over the past 70 years of her reign, the Queen had Prince Philip by her side. But with his passing last April, she'll mark this milestone without him. How does she seem to be dealing with that?
Yes, Miranda. Well, it bears repeating, of course. They were married for 73 years. Quite remarkable when you think about it. So obviously, it's going to have a huge personal impact on her. The Queen doesn't talk much about how she feels about things, so it's hard to know exactly. But undoubtedly, she will be feeling that. It's still less than a year since he passed away last April. She has had health issues herself too since then, spending a rare night in hospital in October. Also seen wearing or using a cane at an engagement in October. But still fulfilling engagements, although cancelling some after that hospital stay. She received people for engagements at Buckingham Palace. But perhaps she is steadying herself for what will be this big Jubilee year ahead.
And Redmond, the Queen has also lost, in a way, her grandson, Prince Harry. He's moved across the pond to Los Angeles, stepping down from royal duties, along with his wife, former TV actress Meghan Markle. And all of this happening less than 2 years into their marriage. Harry and Meghan then did that tell-all interview on Oprah while Prince Philip was in the hospital. This obviously came as a big blow to the royals, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly did. I think it is, in a way, you're right, another loss for the Queen, having Harry so far away, moving initially, of course, to Canada and then down to California. And it's pretty much exactly 2 years since that announcement from Harry and Meghan to move away from their royal duties, and just under a year since that was more or less made permanent by the royal family. As you mentioned, there was that tell-all interview with Oprah, and Harry really cited two reasons from his point of view why he wanted to do this. First of all, the press. He grew up in the spotlight of the press with his mother Diana. Of course, he said he saw the way things were going. In other words, he didn't want the same thing to happen to him and his family. And he mentioned a lack of support from the firm, the royal establishment. So that obviously would have hurt the Queen, blindsided the family in some regards. Harry losing his military appointments and patronages will certainly hurt him as a veteran of the Afghan war. The Queen, of course, saying in the statement that she was saddened by his move, but perhaps she'll be most saddened of all by what appears to be the falling out between her two most prominent grandsons, the brothers, William and Harry.
And it doesn't end there, Redmond. The latest crisis the Queen has had to deal with very much on a public stage, as with everything else, is her son Prince Andrew's fall from grace. So what kind of impact is this having on the monarchy?
Well, it's already had a large impact, obviously, with Andrew being stripped of his titles quite recently. And if this civil case lodged by Virginia Giuffre goes ahead in New York this fall, this will be a media circus, Miranda. It will be hugely damaging to the royal family if it does go ahead. One would imagine that ideally, from a royal family point of view, this would be settled outside court, but perhaps that is not what Virginia Roberts Giuffre wants. She wants to see Prince Andrew face some sort of justice from her point of view. Prince Andrew trying to defend himself from his apparent friendship with sex offenders Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. There's no good side to this for the royal family, and it has been and will continue to be hugely damaging.
All right, Redmond, very quickly, I want to ask you, these challenges for the Queen go far beyond her family, with more and more countries questioning their ties to the British monarchy and whether or not it's still relevant. So what do you think this means for the royals and their future?
Well, there still, of course, apart from the UK, are 14 more countries that are realms, including Canada. Barbados leaving last year and becoming a republic. It's quite difficult for a country like Canada to become a republic for various reasons. Australia tried to do it more than 20 years ago. It failed. The referendum failed, arguably a flawed process, according to some Republicans. New Zealand tried to do what Canada did by removing the Union Jack from its flag a few years ago. It couldn't do so. So there are movements in many countries to move away from the royal family, but there are still strong connections too. And I think that will continue to be the case, at least as long as Queen Elizabeth is on the throne. When Charles arrives, well, that's a different matter.
All right, Redmond, thank you so much for your time today. The Queen is no stranger to Canada, making 22 visits during her reign. She took her first tour in 1951 when she was Princess Elizabeth. Since then, she has traveled to all regions of the country and has been a witness and active participant in many historic events. In 1982, the Queen traveled to Ottawa to sign Canada's constitution, securing the country's independence from Britain. Her most recent visit was in the summer of 2010. Now, with more on Canada's constitutional monarchy and what the future may hold for this country's relations with the Crown, we're joined now by modern British historian Marielle Grant. So Marielle, this country has always had a very strong relationship with the United Kingdom. We share a sovereign, we're amongst the oldest parliamentary democracies in the world, and many of our institutions and systems are modeled on those of Great Britain. So tell us a little bit more about what makes us a constitutional monarchy.
Well, the key thing that makes us a constitutional monarchy is that the Queen is our head of state, and she is technically, legally, the Queen of Canada. And of course, that's a product of our colonial past. And it could be, as we go forward in the future, as Canadians, we consider the legacy of colonialism. We may at some point want to change that relationship. But it is, as you said, a very long-standing relationship. Changing it would be very, very complicated because it would require the agreement of all the provinces to a constitutional amendment. And as well, there are many groups in this country that actually have a very close personal relationship with the Crown, notably Indigenous peoples who hold treaty rights with the Crown. And arguably, there are strong benefits to having a constitutional monarchy because it means that we have a head of state who is politically neutral, who can represent all of us at all times, regardless of our ethnic backgrounds, regardless of our political affiliations. And so arguably having a constitutional monarchy has its benefits.
And 70 years is a long time to be on the throne. How have Canada-Crown relations evolved over the decades since the Queen ascended to the throne back in 1952?
Well, I think they've evolved in the sense that we are an important component of the Commonwealth, and the Queen has dedicated most of her reign to developing the Commonwealth into an institution that moves beyond and past its colonial antecedents. Obviously, the Queen has visited Canada more than any other country in the Commonwealth. She sees herself as having close bonds with this country and its people. Members of the royal family have served as governor generals in the past in Canada. I suppose the major change that has taken place really over the course of the 20th century into the 21st is that the Queen's representatives in Canada, the governor generals and lieutenant governors, have now all been drawn from Canadians, or are all Canadians.
What is the current role of the British monarchy in Canada then, and what do you think makes this country's bond with the royals so unique?
Well, obviously, as I said a moment ago, we're in a constitutional monarchy, so the Queen is our head of state, and that means that she represents all of us on national occasions. She is the one who effectively is giving out the medals. Arguably, this means that the political leaders in our country have obviously a very important political role, but they are not acting as head of state. She is. And she has played an important role in the past in terms of advising, 12 Canadian prime ministers over time. She has participated in all sorts of national activities, for example, opening the Olympic Games in Montreal in 1976. She was here, of course, to the repatriation of the Constitution in 1982. Generally speaking, from a historical perspective, she has tended to generate a very positive response. Very famously, when she came to Quebec in the 1960s, there was a great deal of protest, and people indicated that when she was driving through the streets, they were going to be turning their backs to the royal entourage. And she was later heard to comment that she noticed some of them peeking over their shoulders to have a look.
Now, we are looking at a time where people are questioning the relevance of the monarchy. In fact, late last year, the government of Barbados decided to remove Queen Elizabeth II as its head of state, officially becoming a republic within the Commonwealth. So if you could sort of quickly sum up, what do you think this means for the future of Canada's relationship to the royals? Are we likely to follow suit of what Barbados did?
Be very, very difficult for Canada to sever its relationship with the Crown and become a republic. Because in order to do that, there would have to be a constitutional amendment. And that would require the consent of all of the provinces. And as well, there are certain groups in this country who have a very important personal relationship with the Crown. Indigenous peoples who have treaty rights with the Crown, and their views on this would have to be taken into consideration. And one of the advantages of constitutional monarchy is that we do have a neutral head of state. Interestingly, Barbados, of course, has severed its constitutional relationships with the Crown. At the same time, however, Barbados has chosen to remain in the Commonwealth, of which the Queen is a head. So this suggests that its move towards republicanism is obviously a reaction to the colonial past and an attempt to move in another direction. But at a certain level, they still want to remain involved in the Commonwealth and retain some kind of relationship with the Queen.
Marielle, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Queen's Platinum Jubilee marks the 70th anniversary of her accession to the throne. This impressive milestone, never before reached by any other British monarch, will be celebrated with all the pomp and circumstance befitting a queen. Now, here to give us a breakdown of what is being billed as a blockbuster tribute is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, who joins us now from London. So, Richard, this is an extremely exciting time, but while February 6th is the official date of the Platinum Jubilee, the celebrations won't actually take place until this June. So why is that? Why do people have to wait for the celebrations?
The idea is the weather. I would point out, I don't want this to appear a dampener, but for the coronation in June 1953, it was also chosen for the weather, and it poured. But that didn't dampen people's spirits, because what was being commemorated was so unique, and it's unique here because, as you say, Queen Victoria had a diamond jubilee. The Queen had that in 2012. Now, this is a 4-day extravaganza which commemorates something absolutely unique, but also there's so many fascinating mixed parts in this. Firstly, you've got what we always have, the beacons, which are lit around the Commonwealth and in Britain to commemorate something that, again, is a milestone. These are beacons. They date back to the days of the Spanish Armada, where they were warning against invaders. Now, this, of course, is celebratory. Also, the Queen's official birthday, she has two. It's her prerogative, and a rather fascinating one. The Parade of Trooping the Colour, which has nearly 2,000 soldiers and musicians. A fabulous spectacle. That kicks it off.
All right, amazing. And the British government, Richard, has said that it is promising a once-in-a-generation show that mixes really the best of British ceremonial splendor with cutting-edge technological displays. Now, on top of all of this, we know that there's an actual official medal that is designed to mark each Jubilee. So do we know what the Platinum Medal will look like and who exactly it's going to be awarded to?
We know that the Platinum Medal is likely to be awarded to those who've given a certain level of service, including, it has to be said, some members of the royal family. I mean, this is something that tends to be given to those, particularly those in the armed forces, and of course their various, the front line, the pandemic, so forth. There are those who always remember that this occurred, and the medal is there along with the three previous Jubilee medals. Of course, they tend to have this, and the medal that we've seen, the coin, has the Queen saluting, or the Queen in trooping the colour, which was always a very iconic image. I mean, the Queen with trooping the colour, which I mentioned, is going to be in the first day. The Queen is in fact going to be looking back on to trooping the colour, which basically go back to the 1940s. And until 1976, she rode on a particular horse, Burmese, which was her favourite. She now has attended the ceremony in Queen Victoria's phaeton. And yes, you're showing footage as well from the Diamond Jubilee. This is the sort of weather we hope we don't get. It was the river pageant which linked to that given for Charles II. And what you had here was, of course, the heavens opening, British phlegm taking over, and the weather absolutely pouring down on those who were singing to celebrate the Queen. What we hope we get in fine weather, we have, as I mentioned, trooping the colour and the beacons the first day, and then the second day we have the service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's. This has been a feature of every Jubilee, and of course the Queen, being deeply religious, attaches particular importance to this.
And Richard, let me ask you very quickly, how does an occasion like the Jubilee and all its celebrations bring a nation together? What does it symbolize, especially in this moment in time?
Well, what this symbolizes, firstly, is the monarch as a symbol of national unity, and also it, in the time of a pandemic, after 2 years of restrictions of one sort or another, the country is absolutely dying to have something to celebrate. Here you've got 4 days, you've got a big lunch and even a Platinum Jubilee pudding competition, which will be rather fantastic. And you've also got pageants, a pageant in front of Buckingham Palace, and you've got as well, you've got a concert. Since Brian May in the famous Golden Jubilee concert in 2002, who played God Save the Queen from the roof of Buckingham Palace. That was one of the iconic images of the Queen's Jubilees. And since that, I think there's been tremendous interest in the idea of a concert, and it's more egalitarian than the more formal commemorations. Equally, there's going to be, and I mentioned the idea of lunch, and you mentioned bringing people together, there's going to be the idea of reviving the street party. This was a feature of the 1977 Silver Jubilee, which was absolutely fantastic. So with all of the mix of all these wonderful ingredients, how could the Jubilee not be a fabulous success? And let's hope as well, let's forget the Derby. The Queen is one of the world's equine experts. She's won every major race in Britain, but she has never won the Derby. Could this be the first time a Platinum Jubilee win for the monarch who's won all the rest of them?
Well, it'd be a perfect way to mark this impressive milestone that definitely deserves a celebration to remember. Thank you so much, Richard, for your insight today.
A great pleasure.
Meantime, here in Canada, the Jubilee celebrations will also take place across the country in June, with town criers making proclamations and bagpipers playing an anthem. Plus, a commemorative stamp and coin will be minted to honor the Queen and her historic reign. That concludes our special look at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, a major milestone of modern history. Thank you for joining us.